It began with an ordinary envelope in an ordinary mailbox on two ordinary streets that could not have been farther apart. In Recife, Brazil, 11-year-old Lucas dos Santos opened the lavender-scented letter from China and found, tucked among the lined pages of Mandarin he could barely decipher, a drawing. A pale ink sketch of a river curling around tiered hills, its upper edge jagged as though half of the paper had been torn away. On the other side of the planet, in Suzhou, 12-year-old Mei Jiang opened Lucas's crayon-bright letter and discovered her own illustration. A sun-blasted coast outlined in ochre, ending abruptly where the paper had been cut. Their schools had paired them through an international pen pal project. Write once a month, learn a little geography, maybe practice a few phrases in English. Lucas preferred football to grammar. May preferred studying dragonflies to practicing new characters. Neither expected that first exchange to matter for more than a single afternoon. But their drawings fascinated them, and fascination has always been the quiet hinge on which adventure swings. Lucas pushed his tongue between his teeth, straightened May's sketch against the edge of his desk, and set to redrawing it on a larger sheet. He shaded the river deeper, stretched the hills farther. As he reached the torn margin, he paused, pencil hovering. Something inside him, the same hunch that made him veer left instead of right to avoid a pothole on the way to school, told him the drawing wasn't finished. Not incomplete in the usual sense, but rather as though the missing half already existed somewhere else. Across the Pacific, May traced the serrated shore in Lucas's picture and felt the same tug. She laid a translucent grid over the page the way her grandfather had taught her when sketching insects, measured the angles of the cliff, noted the improbable symmetry of the break line. It reminded her of an aquatic beetle she'd once found, its shell cracked precisely in two, revealing a mirrored inner carapace. Half a picture, half a shell. Both implied a hidden twin. They wrote back politely, a little stiff at first. Lucas complimented her shading. May praised his color work. He mentioned the humidity along the Capibaribe River. She described the autumn mists threading through Suzhou's canals, and each enclosed another illustration. Separately, they kept a secret, the suspicion that both halves belonged to something bigger. 2 months later, Lucas had a dream so vivid that when he awoke sweat-slicked, he found moss beneath his fingernails. In the dream, he wandered a labyrinthine courtyard built of obsidian bricks, every wall inlaid with mosaics that seemed to crawl into new shapes when he wasn't looking directly at them. Dragonflies of colored glass skimmed the air. At the courtyard's center stood a bronze gate that neither opened nor stayed shut. Its hinges oscillated in a lazy rhythm, as though expecting a visitor. Lucas reached for the handle and woke. On the same night, May dreamed of the very same courtyard, though in her version moonlight fumed across the bricks and the gate pulsed warm, like a heartbeat. She too woke before touching it, her palms smelling faintly of copper. Their next letters crossed oceans carrying the identical exclamation, "I had the strangest dream." They compared details, obsidian bricks, mosaics, lazy gate hinges. Despite language gaps and the thousands of kilometers between them, their descriptions nested perfectly, like dovetail joints carved by the same craftsman. Neither had dared tell family or friends. Instead, they trusted each other with the uncanny coincidence. That trust multiplied. They wrote more often, slipping into a mishmash of English, Portuguese, pinyin, emojis, and quick pencil sketches. In the margins of algebra homework, Lucas drew the courtyard scene from above. May overlaid it with meticulous annotations, compass directions, moon phases, even approximate dimensions based on stride lengths they each remembered from the dream. February came. May's school posted their letters for Lunar New Year, and one arrived water-speckled on Lucas's doorstep. Its envelope looked chewed, as though the sea itself had opened and spat it out. Inside was a third drawing. May had drafted the corridor leading to the courtyard. But more than architecture, Lucas noticed the familiar, ragged plan form of the paper's right edge. Something clicked. He fetched her very first half-river drawing, laid the new corridor sketch flush against it, and the jigsaw edges interlocked with an audible satisfaction. Picture meeting picture, place meeting path. A mapping seam revealed itself. Lucas took photographs, printed them, and taped the two halves onto a larger sheet. Then he added his own first cliff sketch on the left and trimmed it along its natural break. The shape mirrored the negative space between the other two, locking together with unnerving accuracy. He sat back, heart battering like a trapped moth. 3 drawings from 2 children, a world apart, drawn months apart, formed a single panorama. Cliff, corridor, river, one continuous landscape. He stared until the outlines blurred. When he finally came to, he drew the missing central quadrant in pencil only by extrapolating what must logically be there. The obsidian courtyard and pulsing bronze gate. Satisfied, he mailed May not a letter, but a tube containing the assembled composite, plus his tentative addition. He wrote, "Does this make sense?" Weeks passed in silence, the way time stretches before an exam result. He replayed anxieties. Maybe the post office lost it. Maybe Chinese customs misread the address. Maybe May would think him foolish. A Friday thunderstorm pummeled Recife when the reply arrived. May's handwriting slanted chaotic with excitement. Not only had she received Lucas's collage, she had overlaid her own tracing paper with annotations. Blue arrows indicated water flow. Red lines marked latitude-longitude approximations based on star positions she remembered from the dream sky. "Plot these," she commanded. Lucas, fueled by equal parts fear and thrill, borrowed his mother's laptop after dinner. He opened satellite images, input the coordinates deduced from their dream stars. Somewhere in the expanse of the Pacific Ocean, thousands of kilometers from anything. To his astonishment, at those coordinates lay a speck of land so small, Google Earth blurred it into amorphous green and gray. He zoomed in until pixelation choked detail, but he could swear he saw a shape resembling their courtyard's central compass rose. Less than an hour later, May was online via a chat window, her face pixelated, jittery with poor bandwidth. In broken English, she said, "It there, yes? You see too?" "Yes," Lucas breathed. "But how can we go?" They were children. Passports were objects their parents locked in top drawers. Airfare to nowhere in the Pacific cost more than their families earned in months. Yet once recognitions like theirs occur, the mind refuses to retreat into ordinary. The courtyard wanted to be found. They felt it the way migrating monarch butterflies feel the pull of unseen Mexico. That night, they each dreamed again. This time, the gate opened. Lucas stepped through and saw only darkness, but heard May's voice echoing a single word: latitude. She, waking simultaneously, remembered Lucas whispering back, 74. Neither could decipher the exchange's full meaning. They hurried to record every scrap. Days later, calculating a kind of algebra of dream, May realized that 74 was not a latitude at all, but an angle. The angle between the moon's halo and Polaris she had observed in her last dream, measured by eye and memory. Lucas, scrawling numbers beside soccer tactics in his notebook, divided 74 by the sequence of prime numbers she'd once told him were her lucky charm. The quotient approximated the declination of Argonavis, the mythic ship constellation now broken into smaller figures. Argonavis, the ship of adventurers. A cosmic wink they did not miss. Spring unrolled. Exams, family obligations, chores. They obeyed them automatically, bodies present, minds adrift. Their letters became encrypted mission logs. They experimented with lucid dreaming, setting alarms to stir them during REM phases, writing dream journals, repeating mantras in both Portuguese and Mandarin before sleeping. Meet at the gate, remember the map, bring back a sign. The courtyard responded. Each shared dream added another sensory dimension. Smells of cinnamon bark and sea spray, wind that rustled the mosaics so that glass wings tinkled. One night, Lucas managed to hold a pebble, black and glassy. He woke with his fingers curled around emptiness, yet his palm carried a faint circular scorch mark that took 3 days to fade. When May showed up with a similar mark in the exact same spot during a video call, they fell silent, letting the impossible speak for itself. In late August, Lucas's father, a shipping coordinator for a small firm, announced he'd been offered a berth on a cargo vessel for a trans-Pacific route, Santos to Auckland, with a week-long layover at a refueling atoll. The name of the atoll, Motutahi, meant nothing to him, but Lucas's breath stalled. He excused himself, fled to his room, opened the map May had helped refine, and overlaid it with maritime charts he'd printed off. Motutahi sat less than 80 nautical miles from the speck they'd identified. Lucas confided in his older sister, Sophia. He didn't show her the dreams. He only told her he needed to join their father on the voyage because of a school environmental project about coral bleaching. Sophia, skeptic and protector, demanded the truth. Lucas finally spilled everything. She laughed, then noticed the faint, round scar on his palm and stopped laughing. After a long pause, she said, "If this is real, you need backup. If it's not, you still need someone to stop you drowning." Their mother objected, of course, until their father pointed out that Lucas spoke decent English and Portuguese, useful on an international crew, and Sophia could babysit him while earning hours for her anthropology degree. Visas were arranged with surprising ease. Cargo ships are practical, rule-bending places. Across the hemisphere, May faced a harder battle. Her parents were engineers who distrusted whims. Travel to the Pacific alone was unthinkable. Yet fortune favors oddities. Her Aunt Lynn, a marine biologist, had obtained funding to survey plankton blooms near Micronesia. Lynn needed an assistant fluent in data logging software. May had spent countless weekends coding with her cousin. Lynn saw a cheap labor opportunity. After days of persuasion, and the promise May would continue studying for the upcoming Zhongkao, the arrangement was approved. Neither told anyone the real destination. They trusted timing and celestial coincidence to do the rest. September equinox approached. Nights balanced perfectly between light and darkness. The threshold favored by doors to elsewhere. 2 ships carved opposing wakes toward the same nowhere. May and Lucas, now on the brink of adolescence, kept journals not of homework but dreams. The courtyard dreams grew almost daily, details sharpening into high-definition reality. They practiced touching walls, counting breaths, and repeating each other's names. Sleep no longer refreshed, it recruited. On the 22nd of September, the cargo vessel Nossa Senhora anchored off Motutahi's turquoise lagoon for diesel and fresh fruit. Lucas and Sophia claimed they wanted beach photographs. The chief mate waved them away with a grin and a warning about rip currents. At dawn the same day, May's research schooner drifted on a mirror-flat sea, instruments out, engines quiet. Aunt Lynn fretted about a sudden GPS malfunction, 5 full degrees off. May stood at the rail, pretending to scribble salinity numbers while actually triangulating distance by sun angle. Motutahi's silhouette shimmered on the horizon like a smudge of charcoal. That night, storm clouds throttled the moon. Both crews hunkered below decks. Lucas convinced Sophia to help him sneak a lifeboat onto the lagoon side where a stand of mangroves muffled waves slap. Lightning made the surf strobe. Meanwhile, May, stomach churning with dread and exultation, slipped down the schooner's side ladder, clutching an orange dry bag stuffed with sketch collages, compass, and 2 apples. She paddled a collapsible kayak toward the island, guided by the lighthouse blink of storm-split sky. If any adult had glimpsed them, one lifeboat, one kayak converging, they might have shouted, but rain blurred distance and reason. The sea, sympathetic to children, quieted just long enough to deliver them like letters. Lucas's boat grounded on white sand. May's kayak hissed across the shallows a few minutes later. They rose and stared, startled into silence by the fact of each other's literal presence, something no dream had yet managed. Lantern light from Lucas's flashlight slanted across her face. May lifted her own beam. They laughed at the same instant, laughter the only antidote to terror. After a hasty embrace bordering on shock, they consulted their composite map. The courtyard, according to triangulated notes, lay inland by perhaps half a kilometer, an impossibility on such a tiny atoll with no known ruins. The island's interior, shielded by pandanus and breadfruit trees, looked ordinary. Yet beneath the wind they heard a metallic hum, like a struck gong reverberating very slowly. They pushed through vegetation thick with salt crust. The hum strengthened with each step, synchronizing with their pulse scars. Lightning revealed a clearing nobody's satellite had shown, a ring of black stones arranged in a square. One side collapsed inward to form a ramp descending beneath the earth. The portal to their dream courtyard lay not above but below. Lucas and May exchanged nods, then used their flashlight beams like twin spears to pierce the dark, sloping tunnel. The air smelled of cinnamon and sea spray, exactly as in their dreams. Walls glistened, shards of colored glass embedded like stars in cooled lava. Distance lost meaning. Descent felt vertical and horizontal at once, as though geometry had slipped anchor. When the passage widened, they arrived, not in a subterranean chamber, but beneath an open sky so crammed with stars, it seemed a new universe had nested inside the old one. The courtyard was real, obsidian bricks, mosaics shimmering, glass dragonflies pivoting on unseen breezes. At the center, the bronze gate pulsed, half ajar, waiting. Childhood stories caution against walking through strange doors. But those stories are told by adults who have forgotten the taste of the impossible. Lucas stepped forward first. May matched him. Together they touched the gate. It swung without sound, revealing a mirror? A sea? It looked like both, a vertical pane of water reflecting constellations they'd never learned. Gravity, obligation, and doubt all switched off. Yet before they crossed, Lucas remembered something. We need to choose. He flashed back to Sophia's protective fury, to his father's goodbye wave, to his mother's worried cooking. May pictured Aunt Lynn somewhere on deck, scanning radar clutter, blaming herself for faulty equipment. The pull of wonder warred with the tether of love. The gate beat like a second heart. In its shimmering surface they saw flashes. Lucas playing midfield under Recife sun. May releasing a dragonfly she'd sketched. They saw each other, older, perhaps returning here. The visions merged into the same truth. The courtyard was not escape, but invitation. To discovery, never imprisonment. It would remain if they walked away. It belonged equally to dream and daylight. Lucas turned to May. We can come back? May nodded. Dream knows the path now? They reached out together, dipped fingers into the liquid mirror, feeling cold star water curl around their skin. A spark leapt up each arm, etching new but non-scarring crescents beside their circles, coordinates written into flesh. Then they let the gate swing shut. The courtyard dimmed, acknowledging their decision. On the obsidian floor lay two small black pebbles, each with the same compass rose etched in silver. Keepsakes. They pocketed them, bowed, and retraced steps up the corridor. Dawn smeared the tunnel mouth pink. Back on sand, wind had scrubbed clouds from the sky. Their respective vessels bobbed distant, searchlights scanning. An alarm bell clanged from the schooner. Sophia's voice echoed Lucas's name across water like a thrown rope. Adults were already coming. No time for farewells. May pressed her pebble into Lucas's hand. He pressed his into hers. "Puzzle pieces," he whispered. "Still?" She smiled, touched the scar on his palm. "Map," she said, and ran for her kayak. He sprinted to the lifeboat, salt spraying behind him. They reached their ships seconds before questions could become punishments, inventing tales of a storm-dragged outing gone longer than expected. Adults scolded, relieved. No one searched the island. Official logs recorded no ruins. Months later, customs stamps accumulated in passports from exhibitions, conferences, exchange programs. The world seemed suddenly eager to grant them passage. On every flight, they wrote letters and sketches, though they rarely mailed them. Instead, they met inside the courtyard during sleep, now able to open and close the bronze gate at will, exploring what shimmered beyond. Sometimes a rainforest of impossible colors, sometimes a library of wind-turned pages, sometimes only each other's presence beneath alien stars. They never again found a torn page that matched along ragged edges, for the simple reason that they no longer required paper to prove the puzzle. The map had migrated inside them, piece by living piece, until waking and dreaming overlaid seamlessly like tracings on a lightbox. Wherever they traveled, Lucas at a youth tournament in Ghana, May presenting insect biomechanics in Vienna, they only needed to glance at their palms where the circle and crescent scars formed a tiny figure 8. Coordinates, gate, promise, all writ in skin. And although years would pass before circumstance allowed them to meet in daylight again when it finally happened, on a pedestrian bridge in Singapore lit by LED constellations, they did not begin with introductions or catch-ups. Instead, each held out a closed fist and opened it slowly. In May's palm lay Lucas's pebble. In Lucas's palm lay May's. They pressed the stones together. The compass roses aligned, sealing the old seam. Around them, commuters hurried on, thinking these two young adults merely exchanging lucky charms. But deep beneath the city hum, far below subways and utility tunnels, a courtyard of obsidian stirred and stretched its dragonfly wings, sensing its cartographers had arrived.